Now you can hear me. Can you hear me? Levi, can you hear me? No? Anyone? Okay. Let me know when you're ready.
Ram, you hear me?
The next part of the story.
Can you hear me?
I hear you. You hear me, Rami?
Are you still listening to the speech? Huh?
Hey. I should tell him to come and listen to you. It's
Are
much
you
more
waiting
interesting.
for the speech, the Kinner speech to be finished?
Don't wait for nothing.
No.
How long does the keynote speak for? An hour?
He's still speaking. He's still speaking now.
Yeah, but he's probably not stopping anytime soon. In a good day, Mendel likes to talk.
Okay. So you tell me what you want me to do.
Let's go 2 more minutes and we'll go with it.
Okay.
That's okay, please.
Speech for 2 minutes.
Waiting for us. One person, one mitzvah, one day and one home at a time, until we can stand proudly and together with Malkeinu Bereshenu and declare with joy, Tayera, Zisse, Vater in Himmel, Kan Zehabayim. Welcome home once and for all. Roll call, Shloka International Conference of
Bye. Unless you want to hear the roll call, let's get started.
I can hear the roll call later. He fixes mistakes.
Yeah, it's all pre-recorded.
Okay.
Mute, go.
Oh, here's our magician friend. Still doesn't want to put on his camera. Shnes Alman Shemzach nicht. L'chaim, everybody. L'chaim. Levi sag's l'chaim. A kohen can say l'chaim at night. The Rebbe always said. A kohen can say l'chaim. Who's YC that keeps trying to get in? Okay. Unmute yourself. L'chaim.
Hear you.
Okay. There's someone YC who keeps trying to get in.
I messaged him. I'm not sure why he doesn't get in.
Okay. We're ready to start. Who's coming to speak tonight? Who's the speaker?
The same one as we'll usually. What's his name? Nussi.
Oh, Nussi Garar is continuing. Yeah. Right. Okay.
Yeah, he's on a series.
Like I said, I better finish on time.
He's not so punctual.
Okay. Tonight, I'm going to do something slightly different than what we did in the past, and then we'll go back to the picture because I want to share with you letter that Hillel saw it already. I want to share with you a letter that the Rebbe wrote 40 years ago this week. Friday, this coming Friday is going to be the 40th anniversary of this letter that the Rebbe wrote to Reb Zalman Jaffe. And the Rebbe mentions Manchester. He writes it in Ksav Yad. A very interesting letter. Many of you in Manchester might have seen it either at the time or since then, but it's not worthwhile to see it again. And the Rebbe's letter is Hafochba v'Hafochba de Kulaba. So the letter is dated here, Daled Kislev. You can see it? I can't see any responses. Can anybody see this? Hello? The letter is dated Daled Kislev, Tavshin Mem Aleph. And Shalom Uvracha. The Rebbe writes, Mahashen Nikabolas Mechtavai Bashtetig. I confirm receipt of your letter from Chov Daled Macheshvan, the 24th of Macheshvan. V'chulu, etc. In other words, there must have been another one. This was what was called a Kollel Prati, a letter. One day we'll do an explanation of the Rebbe's letters, but this is what's called a Kollel Prati. It was a standard text letter that the Rebbe would change every week or sometimes twice a week to answer to all the many different letters, and then the Rebbe would add particular for that person. So it's an auspicious time, the beginning of the Tkufa of Yaakov Halach of the year of Hakel. Interesting that this is already exactly a month after Simchas Torah. It's Daled Kislev. So it's well over a month. And it's still the beginning of the period of Yaakov Holach Ladaki. But the Rebbe Yaakov Holach Ladaki wasn't just Matzah Simchas Torah, but it carries on. We're still at the beginning. At Dalet Kislev, we're still at the beginning of Yaakov Holach Ladaki. So you have to learn what's Yaakov Holach Ladaki. Of the year of Hakel. And then the Rebbe writes the pan that's in the letter, Yikru, there was a numerous panim, will be read based Ratzon Alatzi and HaKadosh. And then the Rebbe writes, Lahatzlocha, Ulipsuris Tevis, and the Rebbe's signature. Then comes the PS. And as anyone who's ever read Zalman Jeffrey's diaries, when the Rebbe wants to say something sharper, he'll put it into the PS. Postscript. The following comes in English in response to your English letter. He used to write letters every week or two on a Friday. He used to write a letter, and he would give the Rebbe an up-to-date report of all the latest, everything that's happening. His penmanship wasn't perfect, so the capitals and the small letters, he was not medagdik in that. And the Rebbe picked up on this point. Look what the Rebbe writes. Particularly as it comes in reference to your remark that Zalman Jaffe wrote, nearly every came who was in New York during Sukkot returned with a cold. This was the first time that Reb Zalman went to New York for Sukkot. He used to go Shavuos, but the year of Hakel, he went for Sukkot. I think he went on Chalamoid. So he writes it, everybody, it is a cold Sukkot. So he writes it, everybody come back with a cold, and then he carries on. But he wrote cold with a capital C. So, Rebbe says, I want to take issue with that in particular. Let's go to page 2. I was, of course, taken aback by this development, that everyone came back with a cold. While 770, especially in the crush of Zman Simchaseinu, could cause some discomfort, I had not expected that it could be the cause of a widespread cold with a capital C. I'm used to receiving reports about returning from 770 filled with warmth and bursting with enthusiasm and energy, which, if it had any physical effects, would no doubt raise the body temperature. And it is to be called, even in English, mithitz, veloy kelt, certainly not cold. If anything, mithitz, with heat, to raise the body temperature several degrees. But to return from here, from 770, with a cold, there adds an exclamation mark. Granted that England's climate is on the cold side all year round, and that Englishmen are basically conservative, reserved, and cool-headed, not given to display of exuberance and overreacting. I've thought that things have changed a bit in England in recent years. Of course, your statement implied no fault, certainly not intentionally. However, here's the punchline here. The association of a cold with 770 seems quite incongruous. It means it's a stidum in Ayubay, especially as Lubavitch here, as well as in Manchester, Great Britain, and elsewhere, Lubavitch has, with God's help, succeeded in breaking the Ice Age. The Amalek and the Klippa, we succeeded in breaking it. We didn't get rid of it, but we managed to break it. And here the Rebbe ends with a very fascinating tefillah for himself. Be it as it may, there are certainly no kpeda klal, no kpeda means the Rebbe is not I'm not annoyed, but rather in the spirit of some of the pidyenis that I have seen, expressing the prayerful wish that it should have an impact on me and on others. So the Rebbe is saying about himself that it should impact, what should that above should have an impact on myself, that my conduct should leave no room for any possibility of a cold in others. You hear this? That 770 in Lubavitch cannot be a source of coldness. And Chas v'Sholom, the Rebbe says, everything is Ashgach Pratis. The Rebbe says that it should be poil in me that I should not be the cause of any coldness by a Yid. 770, the Rebbe, Lubavitch, we're all the Rebbe's Chassidim. That means that when someone comes in contact with one of us, the Rebbe's Chassidim, there has to be warmth and enthusiasm and excitement. It has to exude from us. It cannot be anything else.
Rabbi Kevin, just a quick question. Metitz means with a fever.
Okay. He means,
no.
So he said with passion. I think he meant with a fever. He says, veloy kelt, certainly not cold. Hitz literally means heat. That's what hitz means. In the colloquial term, it's used in Yiddish. It's used when someone has a fever, so we say hot heats. That's true, but it means heat.
So I'm saying, I wondered that I was saying, if someone would come and say he has a fever because it was here new, someone says he has a cold, does get nicht.
Okay, yeah. The cold with a capital C. In other words, they was taking it out of what he meant, out of the context that he meant. He meant cold. They came back with colds. He said, "I'm not talking about cold. He told you came back cold. You're supposed to come back ungewarmt, not cold." Okay, there's a lot of chemer there for a nice verbringen this week. Dalet Kislev. Okay, we have another few minutes, so we'll go through the pictures. We'll continue, unless there's any more questions on that letter. So here's a picture. I don't know. It looks like in the 60s. It's taken obviously from inside 770. The Rebbe came in the morning, and let's zoom in, and you'll see who. And so this must be Shavuos time, and he came for Shavuos, and he caught the Rebbe on the way. The Rebbe coming in, and they were having a chat, whatever it is. I didn't look it up in his diary when this could have been, but this is sometime in the Toshin Chofs. Okay. He would many times stand outside. He would hold the door, and many times there was a conversation which he writes about. Okay, here's an interesting one. What's going on over here? Let's make it big. Can anyone figure out what's going on over here? So this is after Lag Baimer parade. The Rebbe was going to the oil. The Rebbe was holding a bag, as he always did, going to the oil. Here's one of the women collectors, someone taking a picture. And the Rebbe was going out to the oil. Every year on Lag Baimer, they would go to the oil after the parade. They would quickly move the stage, which was built, the podium that was built for the Rebbe. So this is, and now you can see there's plastic, there's white around it, a sheet, whatever it was. This is before the fancy days, which started in Toshin Mem with a nice velvet, a nice royal and regal velvet stage. Then it was a piece of plastic, whatever they put. So this is going to the oil after the Lag Baimer parade. Looks to me like early Lameds looking at the Rebbe's face, but it could be the late Chofs as well. I don't know. This is in the upstairs shul of 770. You can see the windows that were there. The Rebbe was getting an aliyah. This is probably Toshin Chavhei. This is when the Rebbe was davening for the Amud every day that year. It was an oval for the Rebbe's and Chana. So this is Toshin Chavhei, and the Rebbe was getting a Sheni v'Chamishi, Sunday or a Monday or a Thursday, and the Rebbe was getting an aliyah. How do I know it's then? Because this is my uncle. He was still a bocher then, and otherwise we know that the Chassidim didn't see the Rebbe with talis and tefillin, except for very rare occasions. And that would have been Yud Shvat, Purim, Erev Rosh Hashanah, and Erev Yom Kippur, Chav Ov, and later on Vov Tishrei. Otherwise, the Rebbe in Talis and Tefillin Chassidim only saw 3, 4, 5 times a year tops. Anyway, so this is Toshin Chavhei. There's no date, but it was in during the year of Avelis. Someone will tell me when Rabbi Gerari's arrived, and I don't know what this is. This is the 770 before the expansion in Toshin Lamed Daled. So there's the front wall over there. Let's see what's on the Rebbe Stender here. Okay, so it's the Rebbe Sid. The Rebbe Sid is on the Stender. There's a window there in the front. This could have been on Chanukah. I don't know. And the Rebbe is asking them something. I don't know what's going on. This is Meir Halig right here, with his hand up here. And these were the hats we used to wear as kids as well. This is early Lameds, early 1970s. A much smaller 770.
Regard is about to. Oh, he almost. No, he didn't join.
Huh? Another one from the front door, the light shining in, a nice, unique picture. The Rebbe coming in from his house. You see the Rebbe's wearing gloves. It's a cold winter day. The Rebbe's wearing a glove, and he's carrying the bag. It's difficult to tell which tkufa this is, because you can't really tell from the light what the color of the beard is. It could even be just the days when the Rebbe came back earlier and is wearing a glove still from the oil. in the oil in those years, the Rebbe used to wear a glove as well. On one hand, a glove, and on the other hand, the Rebbe would tear the paper with. So this is Rebbe coming back into 770. Again, I don't have a date. A Yechidus that was going into his pocket to put his glasses back or to take out his glasses. There's not much I know about this picture, but it's a unique picture. I saved on my computer the unique pictures every time I see them. Prime Minister of Israel, Menachem Begin, came to visit the Rebbe on Vov Menachemov, 1977, Tavshin Lamed Zayin. There's a whole series of pictures, and he came to, this is outside the front steps of 770, his security and the police. This was in the middle of the summer. Jem, a while ago, had a whole video where they had a presentation of what happened there. Beautiful. The Prime Minister of Israel came to visit the Rebbe. He came many times, but this was when he came in the office of Prime Minister. At the end of this is during one of the Lag B'Omer parades. Here's an Aliyah downstairs in 770. In the this is Mem Tes, Tavshin Nun. Unique. You can see here the Rebbe's white suspenders, shleikis. His talis fell back, a nice yarmulke. The beginning of his Aliyah. The Rebbe would hold, just while we're talking about it here, you see the Rebbe's holding on to the Eitz Chaim. Some people have the meaning of holding to the Eitz Chaim with a talis. Sometimes you see Lubavitcher in Shul, they don't know. The Rebbe did not hold the Eitz Chaim with his talis, except for once a year. And that was on Simchas Torah when the Rebbe would get Chosin Bereishis. That was the only time that the Rebbe held the Eitz Chaim with his talis. Otherwise, the Rebbe held directly to the Eitz Chaim all year. Simchas Torah, Chosin Bereishis, when they would call up the Frierdiker Rebbe and the Rebbe together, that's when the Rebbe would hold the Eitz Chaim with his talis. Where are we up to, Levi?
The rabbi is on. I'm just not sure his video is on. I think if we hand over to him, Rabbi Garari, are you able to switch on your video if you can hear us?
Oh. Be well, everybody, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you very much, Rabbi Kevin. Welcome, Rabbi Garari. Rabbi Garari, you're on mute. We can't hear you yet.
Okay.
Speaks at our carnality. When so much.
Okay. Time to start. Okay. I overheard the last piece, explaining that the Rebbe used to not hold the Eitz Chaims, but I clarify the Frierdiker Rebbe did hold the Eitz Chaim. So when it came to that, when they called up, this is something very interesting that we all witnessed, that every year on Simchas Torah Day, because the Frierdiker Rebbe wanted that the Rebbe should get the same aliyah of Chosin Bereishis as he got. So by that aliyah, being that the Frierdiker Rebbe did hold the talis by the Eitz Chaim, so the Cheretz for the Frierdiker Rebbe, so the Rebbe also then held up the Eitz Chaims. So now when the Rebbe wanted that they should always call up the Frierdiker Rebbe at this aliyah, it wasn't everything that the Rebbe does is 100% emes. That means that when they called up this aliyah, the Frierdiker Rebbe came to when the Frierdiker Rebbe was here on this world. The Rebbe did not hold the Eitz Chaims, but he held it with a talis because that's what the Frierdiker Rebbe did. Everyone noticed that at this aliyah, the only time in the year, the Rebbe also hold the talis in the Eitz Chaims. And I remember that in my days, early days, when Rabbi Yochanan Garden, Alav Shalom, would call the Frierdiker Rebbe a very emotional thing because he was a real, and when Frierdiker Rebbe, this is something with heartfelt feelings. So this is something very interesting to note. I also heard, can't say exactly over B'diuk, but recently came out at one time by Hakafis. The Rebbe used to go, of course, with Shag by the Hakafis. In the earlier years, there was one time Vice Rabbi Groner told this story to his children. Here, showed Rashag that the Frierdiker is here dancing also. And he flipped out because he saw the Frierdiker Rebbe. And it came to the next day, the Rebbe was going to go a Kofis again. So the Rashag was like crying, like he was afraid to go to the sarcophagus because the Frierdiker Rebbe might be here. So what the Abel Groner said, that at that time, when he saw Rashag crying like that, being overwhelmed, the Rebbe had a very, very big smile and somehow gave him the encouragement to go to that conference. But this is a very powerful story, how the Rebbe showed Rashag that the Frierdiker Rebbe is present, begashmi is in the guf, dancing together with the Rebbe at that time. Okay, Atkan is the story. So now I want to tell also a story, a Hagdama to what we're going to be learning today. Chassidus is not some interesting philosophy, a theory, very beautiful, fascinating. The whole Indian of Chassidus, take it to heart and to take it to yourself. And if we don't take it to ourselves, then we're missing the whole boat. So I want to give you a hakdama to the story that I want to tell. In Buffalo, for many, many years, it was very difficult to get Shabbos by day, during the day, to find students to come to Armenian. It was like impossible because Friday nights, it was the time to go to drink, to bars, and I had no from students, no yarmulkes, the students who had no connection to coming to a shul, to a minyan, and Shabbos, but in the morning, forget about it. There was the university was like a funeral parlor. You didn't hear, everybody was sleeping, plastered, shikah. You couldn't hear a pin drop. And I should go ask them to come to a minyan. It was very hard. Because so the Eibishter made that Russian immigrants moved to Buffalo, and like in a lot of Jewish communities. And eventually we made a very big Suda every Shabbos day. And food has a lot to do with a lot of things. It brings all kinds of people. And we had Russian Jews coming for Shabbos Shachris. And of course, we had Russian Sidurim, Russian Chumashim. And after the Suda, I would talk to them. A lot of them spoke Yiddish. And that's how we tried to be Makar, the Russian Jews. And it was one year that was sitting right opposite me. Every Shabbos, he had this front seat. And whatever I said, he was shockled. Like not only he understands, he's like all for it. And I say to myself, Baruch Hashem, at least I know one guy, he really gets it. Anyways, he's chuckling away. This is going on for a few years. He's chuckling, and I have this Amachaya, Dasa Shanayid, Afashteit, Azach. One day, as I push it innocently, he asks me, has a question. He says he understands everything I'm saying. But this word, Eibishter, like what does that mean? Versteht the Suffergut? As after all this talk, he didn't know if Eibishter, is that something you put into the fish or to the soup, or what is this Eibishter? this is a little joke, but it's a truth. To say, we could learn and hear, but if you don't get it, and you don't get what Chassidus wants from you, and it means it adds up to, I gotta act differently and look at life differently, then you didn't get it. So I want to tell a short story. In the beginning of the Alter Rebbe, when the Rebbe was, Alter Rebbe became Rebbe, and he had Talmidim, very great Talmidim. He used to say, Teures Ketzorim, short Teures. They're all out. We have a lot of them in a special chelik of the Alter Rebbe's Forum. It says, Sefer Ma'amorim Kitzurim or Hakitzurim. These are just a little bit of taste of short Teures that the Alter Rebbe used to say. This would go on till the story that when he came out of jail after Peterburg, then he started really being Meirach in Maimorim and with a lot of Havana. But that all began first after the jail, after he came out. So he used to say short Teures, fiery Teures, Scud missiles. To Alter Rebbe, you got to hold on to your cheers when I tell you what he said. He comes out, Alter Rebbe, and he says with a niggin, Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. Why does the Dalet of the Echad look like a hatchet? Big Dalet, it looks like a from a hatchet. It's just but you're hack. So why does the Dalet look like that? Because you have to hack in your head the Echad. That's all he said. Good day. He dropped a Scud missile. And you have to see him. What's that? Well, it was like, he said that. He said everything. All of Chassidus is about Echad, but this, you gotta knock this into the head. Why? Because you, me, we are the biggest opponent to Echad. He's the only, and I say I'm the only. Is anything that matters? It's all me. Base, or it's me. That's not so easy. Yeah, you could talk about it, you could write about it, you could prove about it, but are you holding it? So the Alter Rebbe said you gotta knock it into it. So this is the Hakdama of what we're going to learn today. In continuation of second Ikrim that Rambam writes to believe in the Eibishter as Echad. Yichudai Yizbarach. So last week, we went through the explanation, what the Baal Shem Tov says on the words Li Olam Hashem Dvorcha Nitzu Bashamayim, that the Eibishter not only created the world in the beginning of the Beriah, but that every second the Eibishter has to recreate everything, just like the first second of creation. Because the world on its own does not exist, has no basis of existence, and it needs Hashem to create it and to make it and to give it life, but to give it existence. That happens every second. And therefore, basically, that adds up that there's nothing else existing besides the Eibishter. Because it's not the object that's existing, it's the Eibishter that's existing. That's the Eibishter, the way it is, whatever that creation is. It doesn't have its own existence. That's basically Bekitza. So therefore, Hashem Echad means he's the only existence. And it has a tremendous difference in our lives, how we relate to the Eibishter, how we relate to Torah mitzvahs. Everything changes when that's the only reality that really goes on, that's going on. However, very, very important to introduce today another level of understanding Yehuda Yisbarach that the Alter Rebbe talks ba'ariches from Perek Yud Ches until Chaf Hei included. Also, I must explain that this is also brought out in Shara Yichud Ve'emunah in great explanation, and that is that there is another deeper way of understanding Yehuda Yisbarach, understanding Hashem Echad. And the difference between the explanation that we talked about last week and the explanation that we're going to learn about today is a major difference in how we value ourselves and the world. And if we get it, and we get it clearly, and we think about this constantly, it's supposed to have a very dramatic impact on mitzvahs. So let me go slow and try to explain where I'm coming from. The Alter Rebbe, as we all know, whole Tanya is based to understand a pasuk in the Torah. Torah says to Yisrael that the Torah is not Bashamayim, it's not up in the heavens, and it's not over the sea. It's very possible, it's very close, meaning very accessible, very possible to follow the whole Torah. But everybody knows that it's not so simple. Very possible to keep the whole Torah every day, every moment. This is a tremendous discipline. 24/7 to be on guard, to follow everything that Hashem wants us to do. And yet Hashem, who knows us, he created us, he knows us inside out, and the Torah is eternal, the Torah is relevant. How can we possibly understand the pshat in the pasuk? To be a fromme Yid, Torah mitzvahs is very possible. It sure doesn't feel that way. And yet the Torah says it is. So the Tanya, my whole basis of this Tanya is to explain what does Hashem mean that it's Karaiv Miyot. Now, I forgot to mention, not just that the Torah says it's possible, it says it's very possible. Very possible. How could the Torah say such a thing? So really, when we learn Tanya, Mitzvah Hashem, everybody learns Tanya, we have to always go back. How is the Tanya explaining how Torah in mitzvahs is so possible? The last time I tried, it was very, very hard. And it's a struggle. And tell you the truth, without getting into details, the Rebbe himself, the Rebbe we have today, the Rebbe's Pirush on Tanya, and the Rebbe himself writes in certain prakim that it's a big tzarachi, and how taka what? So how could that be? It's karav miyoid when the Alter Rebbe alone writes that there's a yegiya atzuma and all kinds of words like. So what does it mean karav miyoid? It's a tremendous struggle and it's tremendous difficulty, and the Torah says no. Ki karav elecha hadavar miyoid. So there's a whole arichas in this. I'm just closing. There's a whole arichas in this, because some people say that what was bothering the Alter Rebbe in Tanya was not stam Torah mitzvahs, but really what was the most difficult mitzvahs was Ave and Yireh. There's a mitzvah min Torah that a Yid is supposed to love Hashem. And we say it every day in Krishma, V'ahavtas Hashem Elokecha. The truth is, it's one of the most difficult mitzvahs. How can I love someone I can't see, I can't touch, I don't know anybody in common, I have nothing in the world to how, what does that mean? And I have to love this Eibishter. So, according to many, they are learning Pshat and Tanya that the ikar difficulty that the Alter Rebbe wanted to explain is how one can be Mekayim mitzvahs Ave v'yireh. And if that is the Pshat in the Tanya, the answer really is not till the prokim in the mems. And that is very interesting. In the yeshivas, we were never taught the Tanya that way. You learn Tanya, this is a perik, that's a perik. But a person who learned 37 prokim in Tanya, he didn't even get to what the Alter Rebbe wrote the Tanya for. Because the Alter Rebbe finally talks about Ave v'yireh in the mems, in the early mems, in the late mems. So if you don't learn till the end of the Tanya, because he didn't fit it, he didn't even explain yet how to get to Ave v'yireh. So this is something very important for all of us to know, that according to many Chassidim, the whole Tanya was have Ave. So that's something to keep in mind and to remember that that's what the Alter Rebbe wants. He wants us to help every Chassid or every Yid. How can I be Mekayim the mitzvah of Ave v'yireh, which seems to be the most difficult mitzvahs in the Torah? But let's go back to reality. We're not even, Ave v'yireh is one difficulty, but to keep Pashit, Machshava, Dibur, Umaise 24/7. Like the Alter Rebbe says in Tanya, Abeinani. Abeinani is what is required from every Jew. That's how the Alter Rebbe says. Midas kol adam v'achreha kol adam yimshach. Every Yid should strive to be a Beinani. What's a Beinani? Nothing to do with Madreges, nothing to do with, he didn't turn over his Nefesh Habamis. He has the same Nefesh Habamis. It's growing like it's going out of style. Every day he's getting fatter and rubber. I don't mean physically only, but push it. We grow in our gashmius and chumius like it's going out of style. Ava became b'negeya l'toira mitzvahs, kiyuma mitzvahs. We have no exemption. Every Yid is mechuyev al pi Torah to keep all of the mitzvahs 24/7. There's a tremendous avodah. Tremendous. And here the Torah says, no, it's Kollel miyot. And as the Rebbe taught us and taught us and taught us, that everything that it says in the Torah is the absolute emes. It's not exaggeration. It's not, hopeful dreams. Every word in the Torah is absolute true. So what am I supposed to understand? That the Torah says you have no exemption. It's very possible. It's Kollel alecha dava miyot, and you got to work on it. So the Alter Rebbe takes, I'm giving you introduction, the Alter Rebbe starts explaining this. It's like a whole Masechta for itself, begins in Perek Yud Ches and ends in Chaf Hei Va'ad Bechlal, with Chaf Hei. And the Alter Rebbe brings a whole idea, fascinating idea, that the whole Yiddishkeit could be packaged, could be capsulized in the first two commandments of the Aseres HaDibros. Somebody asked, could you tell me what's Judaism standing on one foot? So we find in the Gemara, the Ger asked Hillel, the Alter Rebbe has another way. You want to know what the whole Judaism is all about? It's Anochi v'lo. We know that according to all days, all the Yidden heard from the Eibishter the first two Dibros. What happened after that Dibros, there's many different Rishonim, have different machlokes, what we heard, but the first two commandments, everybody's in agreement, we heard this from Hashem himself. As we say every Friday night, if we listen to Pirush HaMilos, we say, Hishmiyanu Keil HaMiyuchad. We heard this from the Eibishter. Now, why did we hear the first two? Says the Alter Rebbe, because the whole religion is all in these two. All the mitzvahs I say is included in Anochi Hashem Elikecha. Hashem says, I am God, therefore you're supposed to do whatever I command you to do. Then there's a commandment, you're not allowed to worship any foreign god. In this is included all the loises. Every loises in the Torah, if it talks about don't wear shatnez, don't eat treif, everything is included in loyilach. So let's understand, how is everything concluded? If I chas v'sholem, if I eat treif, I'm an oved avodah zarah. What's the connection? If I don't, whatever Lois says, what does this have to do with avodah zarah? So we're going to talk about this today in Mitzvah Hashem. But what's interesting is that Alter Rebbe learns b'pashtus that the whole religion is about either you accept me or you're worshiping idols. In other words, you're not only not listening to me, you're going the opposite of me. That's the whole religion. Either you're connected or you're disconnected. That's the issue, which is really very, very important in Avodas Hashem. The issue is, our mitzvah means connection. There's nothing greater that the Eibishter could offer than himself. When we do a mitzvah, we're connected, we're united with Hashem himself. There isn't any more. There's nothing more. Gan Eden is small potatoes compared to the Eibishter himself we're attached to. What is the worst thing about an Aveira? It's the hell that we're going to toast? It's the microwave oven that we're going to be in? No, the worst part is disconnecting. Whole religion is about either I'm connected or I'm not connected. So I want to give you a little joke, but this joke is not so funny. Unfortunately, I went through this experience. I saw that there are people who never living on a respirator. They can't breathe on their own. Now let's imagine for a moment, and this could happen today in these days. Imagine somebody is chas v'sholem in intensive care, and he's chas v'sholem, he's hooked on to a respirator, and a very nice nurse comes smiling into the person saying, "Good afternoon, how are you? I have another patient down the hall who also needs and we're out of respirators. I'm sure you wouldn't mind if I take your machine and I'll just, for 15 minutes, I'll come back, but I need this for another person." If the person knocks with his head and he says, "Okay, why not?" What do you think the nurse does? She doesn't take the respirator and give it to the next person. She says, "Well, this person is cuckoo. He belongs on a different floor," because the floor is for Mishigoyim. Because if a person says, "Why not?" He's not going to live. There's no more 15 minutes. I mean, I'll come back in 15 minutes. You're not coming back. There's no one to come back. When you talk about either you're connected or you're not connected. So somebody would say, and so what's the ramifications from being not connected? Not connected means you're dead. So the Torah says, way the Alter Rebbe puts it, the issue is either you're connected or you're totally disconnected. The Alter Rebbe, it's gonna take a few minutes, but we gotta get this straight. The Alter Rebbe says, which is a very big chiddush, that he says that believing in the unity of Hashem, which the Rambam officially makes it as two mitzvahs, two separate mitzvahs are say. But the Alter Rebbe, and he's based this on a Zohar, that Yichud Hashem is a part of Amunas Hashem. If you don't accept Achdus Hashem, then you're Oved Avodah Zarah. This is mind-boggling. If you don't believe in Achdus Hashem, it's not only you're missing Achdus Hashem, then you don't have it clear Amunas Hashem. And if that's the case, then you are Oved Avodah Zarah, which is very, very powerful. And we're going to talk about this soon, but this is a moigedik nekuda, that when we talk to ourselves and we talk to other Yidden about Achdus Hashem, the way the Alter Rebbe explains it, that we'll soon talk, this is pekuach nefesh. This is not something you could say, "I will talk about this later when you learn this." You gotta know what says the Alter Rebbe is a part of Emunah. If you don't believe in Achdus Hashem, you are a kaifer. Is if you're denying Hashem's existence. Because Hashem's existence includes that he's the only existence. So let's try to see how the Alter Rebbe explains Achdus Hashem, which is a higher madrega in Achdus Hashem, as we mentioned last week. Or let's put it in this way, it's higher than the first three prakim of Shara Yichud Ve'emunah, With there, the Alter Rebbe just talks about the world, how it's dependent on the Dvar Hashem. But there is a much deeper explanation that the Alter Rebbe talks already in Perek Yud from Yud Ches to Chaf Hei. The Alter Rebbe goes and explains there's another whole way of understanding how the Eibishter is the only existence. And that is that the Eibishter's existence is believable without any, his greatness is to no end. And in his presence, anything else that exists has no value whatsoever. Kula kamei kila chashiv. It's not even called an existence. So let me try to explain it a little bit in my own language. If you would be talking on the phone to somebody, the next block, 5 blocks, whatever, and say, I want to tell you something, but it's private. I don't need anybody to listen. This is between me and you. And then I ask him, are you sure no one's around in this room? Sure, no one's around. No one's around? No one's around. Then I say to him, what are you talking about? I saw a fly in your room. I saw an ant. I saw a spider. And you're telling me there's nobody in the room? So what does the guy look at him? What value is this fly, spider? At Bechlal, it doesn't have any value. What are you talking about? In the presence of the greatness of the Eibishter, all the elements and all this, everything has no value to him. And he is everywhere. Now, Dr. Rebbe explains in his way that being that the Eibishter created, the Torah tells us that the Eibishter created the world with words. B'dvar Hashem shemayim nasu, ba'asara ma'amoros nivra ha'olam. The Torah reveals to us that the method, that the way Hashem created the world is with the Aleph Beis, the Lashon Kodesh Dika Aleph Beis. And when Hashem said, Yehi Or, that's how there was Or, the Eibishter created the world with words. So the Alter Rebbe says, so let's take this analogy of words. If you were to say a sentence, what value does a sentence have to your koyach hadibur? You have a koyach to talk to no end. The only reason there's an end is because your body doesn't hang around here too long. But if you would able to stay around, you could talk to no end. The koyach hadibur is to no end. So talking one sentence or even talking who knows how many words, what value is a few words to your koyach hadibur? Your koyach hadibur could talk to no end. So talking something is nothing. And then he goes on to say, and what is dibur? What kind of value does it have compared to your thoughts? You could think much quicker, and you could think in a few moments what it would take, who knows how long to speak. So what is dibur? What kind of value does dibur have to your own machshava? And then he keeps on talking, and what kind of a value does machshava have to your emotions, where your machshava came from? And he keeps on going on and on in a human being. So a person himself, his nefesh, to a nefesh that is bleakful, what value does words have to the nefesh itself? No value whatsoever. How did the Eibishter create the world? So we say every day in davening, if we listen to the words that we say this every day, Ki beka Hashem tzor olam. The Eibishter created Olam Haza with a Yud, Olam Haba with a Hey, or vice versa. So what is two letters? What kind of value does two letters have to the Eibishter? So the Alter Rebbe says the following. If you give in your mind, in your heart, if you give value to anything, that it has some value, in a certain sense, you are contradicting Hashem. Hashem says, this has no value. I am here, and in my presence, this has no value. And you're saying it does have a value. That's how you live your life. It has a value, and you're really into it. What you're doing is, that's avodah zarah. You're denying his existence. Now let's take this a step further. That is just, even if you give it value, anything of value. What happens, but if you give value to something that is against Hashem? An aveira. An aveira means it is the opposite of Hashem. By chas v'sholem committing an aveira, what are you saying? What are you doing when you do an aveira? You are accepting and you're feeding and supporting a force that denies his existence. So that's avodah zarah. So the Alter Rebbe says something that you won't find this in any sefer. That any aveira, what it's doing to your soul, b'shas ma'aseh, you shmad yourself. Could you imagine such powerful words? When a person does, if it's an Issa D'Rabbanan or if it's Issa D'Oraisa, it's against Hashem. Against Hashem means denying Hashem. What is that doing to you? At that moment that chas v'sholem you do an aveira, you're no longer Jewish for that moment. That moment, you are just like avodah zarah, you shmad yourself. The Alter Rebbe says, every Yid is ready to give up his life not to convert. The only reason it's possible for us to do chas v'sholem, not to listen to Hashem, so the Alter Rebbe says, you ready for this? The only explanation how it's possible for a Yid to do an aveira is because of a ruach shtus. The Gemara says, "Ein adam oiva aveira ele imkein nichnis by ruach shtus." What's the shtus? Insanity. What's the insanity? He's totally off the wall. He's doing something that is killing himself. He is disconnecting from the Eibishter. But the Ruach Shtus is, he doesn't realize what he's doing to himself. If he would only be with all his faculties, he would realize that by doing this, he's no longer, at that moment, he's no longer a Jew. And that he would never do it. He would give up his life rather to do it. The only reason why we could do an aveira is because we don't realize what we're doing to ourselves. It's equivalent to avodah zarah. That's what Alter Rebbe says. But how can you really get to this, to understand how in the world is one little aveira avodah zarah? So that's how the Alter Rebbe brings out that if you understand what Hashem Echad means, then giving attention to something that is going against the Eibishter, that means against Achdus Hashem, it means you're going against the Eibishter. And going against the Eibishter, what does it end up to be to you? You shmag yourself for that second. So let me go back, if this is a little bit clearer. It's so interesting that this is it takes a lot of thinking. You got to get it. Chabad is everything is brought out with seichel. But what are you mechuyev according to the Alter Rebbe? When the Eibishter said it's karav miyayit, that's why it was karav miyayit. It's very interesting. In other words, how in the world was all the Yidden before the Tanya came that this concept that this is just like Avodah Zarah and it's either you're connected or you're totally disconnected. Apparently, either people had great neshamis. That I can't answer. But what is for sure, that it behooves every Yid, every Chassid who learns Tanya, has to work on these parakim, and he has to think about this all the time. And only then, if he will remind himself that there's something that you constantly got to think about, then remind yourself. You always have to remind yourself that I really came to this realization that either I'm connected or I'm totally disconnected. There's no middle. And this is what Alter Rebbe wanted. And this is why he wrote the Tanya. So before we even go to other Mamarim, into other things, the first things comes to Tanya. Did I get the Tanya? Do I know what I'm learning? The Alter Rebbe gives us material for every Yid. When I will give you this explanation, and you will work on this. It's a life project. It's not one day, not 1 year. You got to work on this all your life. But if you will work on this project, you have to learn about Alter Rebbe starts saying first, who are you? What means a Yid? And where does he have this emunah? This is all in a package from Perek Yud Ches. He has a whole set to explain all the parts. You got to get it. Who am I? What is God? What's my connection? But the Nikuda is, the Alter Rebbe says, if you understand Achdus Hashem, and Achdus Hashem means he's the only existence because everything besides him, in his eyes, has no value. So therefore, he is the only existence. Now I want to bring out that if a person would only learn that the Eibishter creates the world every second and the Eibishter is the only Metzias, it doesn't really hit home, and it's not as effective that you can go about your life calm and cool. And yeah, I learned this Indian, the Eibishter is the only existence. But when the Alter Rebbe brings this out, now, any kind of a recognition in your mind, any attention that you give to anything besides Hashem, you're playing with Avodah Zarah. Till you learn the Tanya, you're not allowed to go to an Avodah Zarah, you're not allowed to look on a picture of Avodah Zarah, all kinds of zehiris. But we Avodah Zarah. But Alter Rebbe says, wait a minute, you could be the big Avodah Zarah. If you give yourself so much attention and you go by yourself, guess what that is? The same Avodah Zarah. There is no other existence but the Eibishter. And by you acknowledging something else, and you give it value, that is bedakis, the Avodah Zarah. So we have a lot to work on. We got to start from Bereshis. A chassid, I'm going to be a little bit funny because I got to entertain you. Do you know that in the olden days, before my times, Hasidim, there were real Hasidim, right? There must have been real Hasidim. It can't be that we were always bankrupt. The biggest insult, if you could tell somebody, what do you think it was? You know what was the biggest insult? Du bist a yesh. Today you tell somebody that, say, excuse me, same to you. What is that? We push it so far out to lunch. What's a yesh? A yesh doesn't mean somebody who's a balgaive. He thinks he's something special. That's a whole balgaive. A yesh means somebody who feels himself. He's very much like he feels himself. His mitzias, he goes by his opinions about what he likes, what he doesn't like. That means he's a yesh. He's all about himself. That was the biggest insult. That means you're learning Chassidus and you're a yesh. Could you imagine? This was like, that means that you didn't even get it. You don't even know what you're learning. Today, there's no problem. Tell somebody you're a yesh. You wouldn't even know what you're talking about. I'm a firm yid. What do you mean? I have a gartel, a kapota, I say chitas, I learn Rambam. What are you talking about? If you are a yesh, you didn't even begin to understand what's Chassidus b'chlal. Look at Tanya. Look at what it says there. Anyway, this is just a little kidding. So I don't know is it time to finish now?
Yeah, we've timed out for today. We're looking forward to next week already.
That's a nice hint. Anyway, so you should all be gebenched. The Abisha should bench us all. We should start getting to work. Everyone has to start learning Be'iyun from Perek Yutches till Chafei. It's not a lot of prokim. You have to learn it and get it and work on it. That is a chiyuv from the Alter Rebbe. He's saying that's korei v'lecha hadavar miyayit. A good day and a good year.
Thank you very much, Rabbi.